and put this discussion into context. The 11th hour talks happening in Nepal are the result of years of political upheaval. It all started in 1995 when the Maoists launched a violent campaign aimed at abolishing the monarchy. A decade's conflict ended by what is called the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, or CPA, in 2006. The following year, former Maoist rebels became a part of the political mainstream by joining the interim government. In 2008, the Constituent Assembly was set up, with the Maoists winning the bulk of the seats. Monarchy was abolished and Nepal was declared a federal democratic republic. In 2009, though, the Maoists left the government after other parties opposed former rebel fighters joining the National Army. Since then, they've been in the opposition, carrying out strikes, for example, in an attempt to oust the ruling coalition government. The question to Santosh Shah, should this government step down, and importantly, would it?
The thing is, they only have 24 hours. In next 24 hours, they need to sit down in the Constituent Assembly and decide whether they have a drafted constitution or not, which in reality they don't have. And then the question comes what to do with this Constituent Assembly, who is going to complete tomorrow. And as I mentioned earlier, there will be a consensus from both sides in the government and the opposition to extend it by 6 months. And then the question comes how the new government will be formed. There's another issue that nobody has raised so far, is if there's a 6 months of extension, what is going to be the size of the government, of the Constituent Assembly, which is 601 right now. I don't think the government has the fund or the mechanism from Saturday onwards, which basically means if they don't have funds to salarize 601 members and a mechanism to do so, there is a good probability that there will be a downsize in the number. If there's a downsize in the number, the conflict which exists in the country right now will sift inside the assembly of the constitution as who is going to take an exit, which nobody probably will want to, because each one of them are paid more than $300 to $400 per month, which is a huge salary in Nepal.
But to downsize the assembly would mean a constitutional amendment which would require the two-thirds majority, which is unable to be obtained at this particular point. So we're back to square one, aren't we, Santosh Shah?
Exactly. There's a good probability that the number may be downsized to 101 or even lesser. That's another conflict that I see within the players, within the political players.
Lawrence Shah says we are looking at talking about the improbable, the impossible. Simply, we do not know. To go back to your earlier point that you made, this is just going to extend dispute for 6 months and put it off for 6 months. Do you believe there's no likelihood whatsoever that there will be political movement during this period, just there has not been in the past 24 months?
I think the past is a good predictor of what's going to happen over the next 6 months. Namely, this is a situation where a political resolution is not going to happen. It will be a military resolution, unfortunately. As I was emphatically mentioning before, the military will take over, hopefully not, but by November. If not, the Maoist, former Maoist rebels will rise up at some point, and that was likely to happen within a year of now. So one of the other two situations is the most likely outcome. Most of the problems with former Maoist rebels, most of them, when you speak to them, they really don't want to go back to fighting. It's really not a comfortable life for them. It is preferable to be in peace as they are now. And they're very skeptical of the leadership, of the Maoist leadership, while they were in government. They think that they failed to achieve anything. And so compensating them is one of the key problems right now as well. It's a third problem, or fourth. You could add on different types of problems. And most of it is a debate about how much to compensate them, how to compensate them, how many of them to compensate them. But the bottom line is that the military is vehemently opposed to having the Maoist fighters incorporated into the armed forces on the basis of a number of things, not the least that the former Maoist insurgents have very low educational level, for instance, and so they would not be able to come into the armed forces. They'll be integrated at the same rank that they were fighting before. The former Maoist insurgents had facility in terms of waging a guerrilla war, but not in a conventional sense to be part of a formal armed forces, where you have to act differently. And so for all these circumstances that we mentioned before, there will be no resolution of anything, of any type, unfortunately, but it is the case. I mean, in some countries, like in this one where I live, the liberal Democrats and conservatives, people of different stripes, politically can agree to do these things, to join government, but it's not going to happen in Nepal, unfortunately.
Senator Shah, we have heard very insistent Lawrence Sayers saying that the military is going to get involved. Having listened to him, are you thinking about changing your mind?
No, because we should not forget that 2 years ago we also appointed the first president of Nepal. So if there is a crisis, the first person or the ultimate person who should respond to this is going to be the president. And now Maoists were in the power when President Yadav was appointed or voted in as the president. So they were very clear about not giving enough executive powers to him because he was earlier former from the opposition party. Now it depends how much power the president wants to exercise or wants to pull in a situation of emergency or in situation of chaos when public sympathy will ultimately go to him. And if we look at his track of 1.5 to 2 years, it's been pretty smooth. He has always stood for national integrity, and people have developed a lot of faith and love for him. And that is the strength that we have not used or even thought of exercising so far. And this may come into action if a situation like that arises. We should not also forget that international community has taken strong interest in Nepal, and they have a strong footing now since then King Gyanendra took power in 2003 and then took absolute power in 2005. That's the time when a lot of international bodies, several governments took a stronger interest in Nepal. They are not going to stay quiet, and they are not quiet even right now. So we should not forget all these other major political and power players that exist besides the current government and the Maoists.
Lawrence,
in addition to that, rule of law in Nepal.
Lawrence Sayers, we heard there the words emergency rule. We heard there the word president perhaps presiding over it. Is the president of the 2-year-old republic powerful enough to be able to maintain a stability should the occasion arise of an emergency period?
No, obviously the response will be no, but he's more powerful than the former prime minister, the Maoist prime minister Prachanda. We have to consider that Nepal is a failed state. So we're talking really about a failed state trying to do something together. The only presence of the state that you can see in Nepal is the military. That's really the only presence that you find of the state credible. The rest is there's no prestige to any of the politicians, not to the level that the former speaker was talking about. People are partial to one ideology or the other, but the one thing that we have to also keep in mind that there was a former king, and the former king has been silent for the most part, but he appears to be in complete denial that he's no longer the king. I am aware that he feels like that, and the military, perhaps, I mean, if my prediction is correct, if and when they take over through a coup, they will most likely go to him and reinstate him in some form, possibly as a provisional government figure, and that's the situation.
Well,
Sadly,
the situation there, they're very clearly very complicated. A deposed king, an army on the sidelines, and up to 20,000 former rebels in various parts of the country. Many thanks to our guests, Kana Shahi and Lawrence Sayers in London, and Santosh Shah in Kathmandu. And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. I'm Mike Hanna. Goodbye for now.